Oath keepers!
Hey! Hoorah! Hoorah!
Long live the Constitution!
It is an exciting time to be alive. Let me just say, this is an exciting campaign, and it's because of thank you to every single person in this room for believing in Dr. Paul's message that we're doing so well in Iowa. We're reaching out, we're talking to our neighbors and our friends, and it is exciting. My name is Megan Walker. I'm the Voter Outreach Director. I work out of the headquarters in Ankeny, and the campaign headquarters is booming and beaming with excitement over there, and it's so thrilling to be out here on the road and meet with Iowans throughout the entire state and just see the excitement all over. So thank you so much for everything. I wanted to thank you for signing in with the clipboards that are going around the room. We're sending out another set of clipboards right now. It's a completely different sign-in. I'm working on building coalitions for Ron Paul. So that second pass of the clipboard is a different sign-in. If you are a farmer, a veteran, a homeschooler, a gun owner, a small business owner, I'm just trying to collect people in those specific groups that support Ron Paul for some momentum. So just to clarify any conclusion with the second round of clipboards going around. Thank you very much, and we'll be start here pretty soon.
Well, my name is Drew Ivers. I live in Webster City, Iowa, about an hour north of Des Moines. Been involved in politics for quite a long time, and it is my privilege, and I really mean that, not a platitude, to be involved in this Ron Paul campaign. And it also is my privilege to greet all of you here for coming and making history in this country. And the history is going to start right here in Iowa, and it's going to start on January the 3rd. And all of you are going to be a part of that. Okay? We've got... Well, we're making history. We're at a point in time that's crucial in our country, and I've heard some say that this is the most important election that we've had since 1860. And everyone followed the election of 1860. Some things happened, some monumental things happened in this country, and it's going to happen again, and now is the time, this is the place. And I want to let you know that you're in on a candidate and an election, and the candidate we're going to introduce you, or I am in the process of introducing you right now, is one that is electable. Electable. He is the best candidate to beat Obama in the fall. All right, it's my privilege to introduce to you the candidate who has the support of the people, the support of the party, and that's growing as we speak. Support of the party activists. We even have pastors that are coming by the increasing numbers into this camp, and I know that's been an issue. And it's growing and growing by leaps and bounds. So, with no further ado, I want to introduce to you the champion of the Constitution, the man who's never voted for a tax increase, never voted to give more part of the agenda, and never voted for unbalanced budget, never, incredible, a historic record, a historic candidate, a statesman, an honorable man to lead this country in the right direction. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Ron Paul.
so many of you, we would like to restore our freedom to this country. We once had a very, very great nation that was built on individual liberty, personal property rights, sound money, a common sense foreign policy, and we can have that again if we do the job. So I welcome you here tonight. I am so delighted that you have come out. Before I get any further along in my remarks, I would like to introduce two members of my family that are with me tonight. I have two granddaughters. They are sisters, but they're sitting over here, and I'd like them to stand up. They're both students, one's in college and one's in medical school, and they're on Christmas break, so they like going on trips like this, and they like to meet so many of you. So, but it is a real delight to see the wonderful turnout. This is fantastic. And there has certainly been some momentum building. And I have been, talking about the freedom message and trying to improve our government and to deliver a message for a long time. And there was a time where, to me, as far as I was concerned, if somebody would listen, I would talk, and I would go around the country, and sometimes I could get 15 people to come out, and sometimes 20 people, but it was always one-on-one. So to me, it's a delight to find out what is happening, because something big has happened in these last 4 years, something in the country. Some negative, but some things that are very positive. The negative things are that the economy has crashed, and the American people have finally gotten around to being sick and tired of all our wars that we're fighting overseas.
Right. Yeah.
10 years is long enough to be fighting no-win undeclared wars, and it's time we just brought our troops home. Economically speaking, something dramatic has happened. During the last campaign, I remember when it started in 2007, we did talk about the economy, and I was talking about the economy and worrying about the recession that was pending. But most of what we're facing today is rather predictable. If you come across the Austrian Free Market School of Economics, you will realize that you can predict trends, but you cannot predict timing. Sometimes you will say, well, there's a bubble forming, and we can recognize a bubble. It wasn't too difficult to recognize the housing bubble and an asset bubble. But what you don't know is the precipitating factor which causes the bubble to burst. But in the last 4 years, obviously in 2008, the bubble burst, and we have been suffering from that. Europe is in turmoil. The world is in economic turmoil, and it has not even come close to being resolved. Because the bubbles and the problems came about because governments were too big worldwide, and in our country, too big. We spent too much money, we taxed too much, we borrowed too much, and then we resorted to this foolish notion that all we have to do if you come up short, just print the money and it'll solve all our problems. So we know that doesn't work, and this is the reason that actually I got involved in politics on economic issues back in the 1970s when we lost our last link to gold, last restraint on printing money. And you would think that if people knew the government would just print money, the confidence would be destroyed overnight. But it wasn't. Matter of fact, there's still some confidence in the dollar, and this thing goes on and on. So we bailed out the banks already, we bailed out the corporations, we keep spending money, the deficit continued to explode. Our Federal Reserve and our Treasury officials are over in Europe promising that we're going to bail out Europe and Greece and all that debt. But I think the American people are way ahead of those planners, and they realize that this can't continue, and we got to get a handle on it and rein in big government. The reason in the 1970s why we could anticipate what would happen is if we allow governments to print money, it means that the politicians really get a free ride. They can act irresponsibly. They can do whatever they think they want to do in order to buy some votes. And that is exactly what happened for various reasons. Conservatives might want to spend for one reason, liberals for another reason, and they did. And taxes would go up, but then people were overtaxed, and people didn't like to be taxed, and the politicians didn't like to hear about the complaint of their taxes going up. So we started borrowing a lot of money. Our dollar was good, so we were able to borrow around the world until the debt got so big that the interest rates started going up. And some people don't like interest rates as well, so we have to keep interest rates down. But you don't want to stop what they think is economic growth. So what they resort to, because even under those conditions there were no savings, so there was no money to borrow. So what did they do? They went to the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve was there to buy up all the debt. And that is coming to an end. That is the message. It's coming to an end around the world. It's coming to an end with our government. And we have to make a decision. What do we want from our government? You know, there's a real easy place to start on what kind of government we should have. Why don't we just insist on everybody we send to Washington to obey the Constitution and limit the size of Just think, since World War II, we probably wouldn't have fought any wars. How much wealthier would this country have been? Nobody has attacked us in these last 50 years. We've never even declared war. They don't even go to the Congress. They don't even ask the Congress, which is you, the people, through your members of Congress. So we haven't voted to declare war. How many wars have we been in? Now, the presidents don't even bother acknowledging or notifying the Congress. This last time, we went into Libya. You say, it's just a little old war. It's just a couple $2 billion. Why worry about that? But it's because we take them under our wing. We process that. We didn't send in the troops, but it was our money and our airplanes and our bombs, and a lot of people got killed. Now, yes, Gaddafi was a bad guy. We didn't need him around, but was it our responsibility to get rid of him and put in and allow another government to come in who's probably more aligned with the Al-Qaeda than even Gaddafi was? It doesn't bear good fruit. There are too many unintended consequences. And now what's the president asked us to do? To sell and to provide weapons for the new government in Tunisia. Who do you think benefits from the weapons industry? The people who make the weapons. You don't benefit by us passing out weapons around the world. So the special interests are a lot of times behind our foreign policy. Eisenhower warned us about this. Watch out for the military-industrial complex. There are profiteers in it. So we seem to have had a need to always have some monster out there that we had to destroy. They were on the verge of invading our country and destroying our liberties. Well, I'll tell you one thing that we can be proud of. We have a strong military, and nobody is going to invade this country. There's no chance. We have more weapons than everybody else put together, so that's scaremongering. Every time they have another country that they want to get us to support to go into, it is only an excuse for us to have another war. We've been in Iraq, in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, Turkey, in Egypt. We propped them up for 30, 40 years, $40 billion. And they finally overthrew the dictatorship that we were propping up. And guess what? The people had taken it over. There's still civil war going on over there. And once again, it introduced the Al-Qaeda. And they're in charge. Now, not in charge, but they're influencing. But this has been going on for a long time. You know, we're supposed to say that all the blame has to be blamed on one individual in Iran for all our problems. But you know, we as a government has messed around with that part of the world way too long. They had an elected government in 1953, but we wanted their oil. So our CIA with England and London went in and overthrew that government. And you know what? If they'd have done it to us, we wouldn't have forgotten about it. So this thing goes on, and I'll tell you what, the founders were right. They said we should have a strong national defense. That I strongly believe in. That we should mind our own business, that we should be friends and trade with people who want friendship. And we would get along a lot better than saying that we are going to tell everybody else exactly how they should live and prop up dictators. And if they do our bidding, we prop them up and give them money, but if they don't, we end up bombing them. I suggest there is another alternative. How about a little bit of diplomacy now and then? That's just We have 12,000 diplomats, essentially, and I think it's about time we put them to work and do this. But we've done it in the past, even in recent history, we had to resort to it at times. I mean, they don't want us to talk to anybody who's a potential enemy. But did we talk to Stalin in World War II? Did we finally talk to Khrushchev? Kennedy talked to Khrushchev when they were on the verge of a nuclear exchange. And at least Kennedy called them up and said, what can we do? Well, you take weapons out of our borders, we'll take them off your borders. I mean, what is wrong with that? I mean, that you can talk to people, even people who are our enemies, so to speak, and come together and solve some of these problems. But we end up doing something like that with China. China, how many millions of people have they killed when they were radical communists? So Nixon finally said, let's talk to them and start trading with them. And we ended up doing much better. There's still a lot of problems in trade and whatnot. But it's a lot better than killing each other. But you know, the decade I was drafted was in the 60s. I was drafted during the Cuban crisis. And of course, the Vietnam War was going on then as well. But after 10 years there, a little bit, and then it escalated. It was up until the 70s before that was solved. The French were in there a decade before that. They estimate maybe 1 million Vietnamese were killed. And we lost 60,000. And we finally had to leave under terrible conditions. What did that have to do with our national defense and national security? Nothing. All that did was drain us and usher in a horrible economic decade of the 1970s where we had a lot of inflation, a lot of unemployment. But just think, instead of what happened, instead of happening what they had predicted, they said, we weren't there, there would be a domino effect of the communists taking over that whole world. Well, the Chinese sort of became westernized. They had to do something. Now there are bankers, you know, and then the Vietnamese. Now we talk to the Vietnamese, we trade with them, we travel over there, and just think how much has been achieved in the last several decades compared to the wars that went on. I just don't understand why we have resorted to this effort that we have to solve everything by war and fighting and killing. Yes, you have to defend this country. When you're attacked, you better be ready. And the process is there. But we should not allow our presidents to go to war without a proper permission from the Congress. And I will promise that as president, I would never go to war without permission from you through the Congress with a declaration. People criticize the foreign policy that so many of us advocate, and they say, "Oh, that sounds like isolationism. You don't want to deal with the world." But that's not true. They're using a word to distort the view. But just because you don't want to bomb people doesn't mean you want to be isolated. Isolations are the ones who always want to put sanctions on other countries, not trade with people, not travel, not talk to people, and build barriers around the country. And that is a form of isolationism. But not being involved in the internal affairs is just non-intervention in the internal affairs of other nations. But the very people who throw out these accusations, oh, that's isolationism, we can't do that, led to World War II. And they build up all these fears. But those are the very people who always want to put on sanctions and punish people, even when it hurts the people and not the government. The other day somebody said, we got to put all these sanctions on Iran. They said, but somebody argued, but it won't hurt the leaders. Yeah, I know, but it will hurt the people, and that's what we have to do. That doesn't make any sense at all. Why isn't it time that we quit isolating ourselves from Cuba? Why don't we permit trade and travel to Cuba finally? So there's a lot we can do on foreign policy. The one important reason to talk about it, it's an economic issue as well. We have increased our national debt by $4 trillion because of the wars we have fought these last 10 years. And debt is the big problem. And when a person or a company gets in debt, they have to cut back. This country hasn't come to the realization that we have to cut back. But it should be a lot easier bringing people together on agreeing where to cut. Don't you think it would be a lot easier agreeing that we cut all this overseas funding rather than dealing with the health care of the people? I propose in the first year to cut the budget by $1 trillion. Half of it would come from the overseas spending, but nothing comes out of defense. Military spending is not equal to defense spending. Military spending is something else. So you can spend less and have a better defense. Maybe we would concern ourselves more about our borders in this country rather than the borders between Iraq and Pakistan. We can cut a bundle from that and not diminish our national defense, but we still have to cut elsewhere, and we have too much spending here at home. We need to get rid of several departments that we don't need. The other thing I propose is going back to the budget levels of 2006. And government wasn't too small then, so I would think we could and should and must handle that. But if we don't do it, the effort to take care of the people who have become dependent, the elderly to get medical care, the children to get medical care and Social Security, that's going to all just die on the vine because the money isn't there. That money's already been spent. It's been spent in overseas adventurism. So the only way we can keep up with those bills will be to tax more people, borrow more money, or print more money. And I'm saying keep taking care of the people who need it by cutting spending and starting with these spendthrift programs, these wasteful programs, as well as the overseas spending. If we don't, everybody's going to suffer because our dollar will quit functioning, and that's what we're on the verge of. And this economic crisis is not a U.S. economic crisis. We're still in the driver's seat. They still take our dollars. We still have a current account deficit of huge amounts, which means they take our money and they send us goods. But that will eventually end. We owe $3 trillion to foreigners right now. We owe in our national debt $15 trillion. And the obligation of the entitlement system, nobody can even measure it, 60 or 70 or $80 trillion. And where are we going to get the money? Are we producing much anymore? No, we're producing less all the time. Because of the monetary system, many of our jobs have gone overseas. So we have created an economic danger area because when you talk about, so often people want to do good for people. Give everybody a free education, give everybody free medical care, give everybody a free house. Housing programs didn't work. That ended up bailing out the rich. It bailed out the mortgage people and the derivatives traders, and they were on the verge of going bankrupt, which they should have. They should have. Correction for the malinvestment in the bubble is liquidation of debt. You want that to be done. So the bad debt has to be liquidated. It won't be paid off. But what is happening is all they have done in the last 4 years is transfer the debt from the people who were making all the money on to the middle class. And you ended up owning this stuff. Too many in the middle class have lost their jobs and then they lost their houses. And all that business about being good and provide something for free and have the government do for it doesn't work. And generally, when the government gets involved, and I don't challenge their good intentions. A lot of them have very good intentions. They'll say, well, if we don't have these student programs, nobody will get an education. Even though they only have to look back about 30 or 40 or 50 years, and people still got an education without the federal government. But most of the time what happens, when the government creates money and then the Congress allocates it into medicine or education or housing, it just pushes the prices up. And just think about what's happened in education. Yes, there was a lot of assistance. The students got more, more people got their degree. But look at where it's ended. It's ended with the quality of education down. Students graduating, they owe over $1 trillion, more than all our credit cards, and no jobs. And how are they going to do that? Now everybody asks me, well, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to give them their education and bail them all out? I'll tell you about the only thing we can do is straighten up the economy and make sure they can get a job and work their way out of it. That's what we need to do. overall, the economic problems are very, very serious, and the debt and the financial system and the monetary system needs correcting, as well as the foreign policy. But under these conditions, the real problem is not just a defect in monetary policy and foreign policy and economic policy. The defect is in our love for liberty and our determination to understand what liberty means and what freedom means. And we have forgotten about that as a nation. What has happened is we had so many blessings. We had a maximum amount of freedom, the largest middle class, maximum amount of wealth, and we concentrated on the wealth and forgot about what the fundamentals are of a free society. We thought we could just redistribute the wealth at the federal level, and have the government, shuffle around and make everybody wealthy and equal. And then what happened, though, since that was the accepted mode of politics, that introduced the notion of powerful lobbyists to go in and control things. Who's going to get the money, whether it's the military-industrial complex or the banks or corporations and the special benefits, and the people that this was supposed to have been designed for, to help people get, make sure that nobody was lacking anything, whether it was a house or medical care. They're the ones who have come up short. There's a characteristic of what happens when you destroy a dollar or the money. If you devalue the currency and make it worthless, the middle class gets rooted out, and the money and the wealth is transferred to the wealthy class. That's exactly what happens in a natural fashion with the devaluation of a currency. But on top of this, when the crisis came, we bailed out, the wealthy as well, and stuck the bills on the people. So we need to change this whole concept of economic policy. Many of us are still getting taught they're being taught Keynesian economics, which is liberal economics, which says deficits don't matter, tax the people who produce, spend the money, and make sure you never stop spending, because deficits don't make any difference at all. In contrast to, common sense says you ought to work hard. You have a right to your life and your liberty. You should have a right to keep what you earn. Society falls on us as individuals and as our families and friends and neighbors and communities to deal with those problems. But to believe that saving is evil, they literally teach that savings is bad, and they blame the people on the recession. They say that the people quit spending money. If they'd only spend money, it would stimulate the economy. But if you're a student and you have that student debt and no job, how can you spend money? And what if you've maxed out? How are you going to spend money if there's no savings and you're worried about what the economy will be like later on? But and they have an answer for that. The liberal says the government has to spend the money. They should tax and borrow, and if you don't have enough, you print the money. So you can't solve the problem by doing exactly the things that caused our problem. So it takes a lot of revamping. I think basically we really have to get the spending under control and to get the debt under control and recognize that debt and malinvestment, that is the mistakes that businessmen make when they think there are savings because interest rates are low. That has to be erased from the books. Otherwise you can't have economic growth. If we would have allowed the bankruptcies of those companies that were involved with all the derivatives and all this bad debt, if we would have allowed that, we would have probably all had a bad year. They would have had the liquidation of debt. They would have gone and filed for bankruptcy. But we wouldn't be where we are today. The growth would be back again. So this idea of a correction, and when you have an economic bubble, a correction is good. It's sort of taking the necessary medicine, going through the surgery you need. But if you prolong it, if the government gets involved, it prolongs the agony and it takes so long. But the other thing that I get concerned about when the government gets so much involved in all the intervention overseas and all the economy here at home is the protection of our personal liberties. If we only dwelled on that and understood what liberty and property meant, this would mean that you would have a right to your life, and you'd have a right to your liberty. We wouldn't have an income tax, and the responsibilities would fall on each and every one of us. But it also means that our lives would not be regulated by the government. Our properties wouldn't be regulated by the government. Today, we really don't own our property. If anybody's a landowner and wants to build something, you got to get a lot of permits, from local levels all the way up to the federal government. Some people think you should get it from the UN too, but I have voted no on that. But if we understand this, what personal liberty is about, we could get back to the basics, and that is property rights and contracts and sound money. But we've disrupted that. The government interferes with the contracts. They become the counterfeiters. We're supposed to put counterfeiters in jail, but the government now is a counterfeiter. So, who knows, maybe some of them deserve prison. Voluntary agreements and contracts, so the government does have a role in this. You have to enforce contracts. That's the role of the government. Also, the government has a role to deal with bankruptcies too. You go through a process and you go and do it. But they reverse this. They don't allow the bankruptcies and they dump the bad debt on other people. So the government has become perverse so often what they're supposed to do. For instance, one of the things in a free society is that government should be small and should be open. You should know what they're doing. And today, though, we've turned it on its head. The founders were very adamant about protecting our homes. Our homes are our castles. We should have privacy. But do we have our privacy? Have we had our privacy since the Patriot Act? No. Today, we've lost our privacy and the government becomes more secret in what they do. We need to turn that around. After 9/11, it was a shaky period of time, and it required some reassessment. I wish they had reassessed our foreign policy a little bit more than they have. But one thing the response was, well, you know, what we need to do is pass this law called the Patriot Act so we can watch everybody to make sure that you're not a terrorist. So that Patriot Act passed a couple days, wasn't long afterwards. It was not even really discussed. It was on the floor for an hour or so, and then that bill came up. And I recall talking to somebody I was sitting beside when we were getting to vote for this. I said, "You going to vote for this?" And he said, "Oh yeah." I said, "Have you read it?" "No." I said, "You know there's going to be some bad stuff in this." He says, "Yeah, probably." I said, "Why are you going to vote for it?" He says, "Under these conditions, how can I vote against something called the Patriot Act?" And he said, "I'd have a hard time explaining that to my constituents when I go home." I said, "Yeah, but that's your job. You can explain it to them." The Patriot Act has not made us safer. It has undermined our liberties. As a matter of fact, the proposals for the Patriot Act was a long time coming. It was a long time before 9/11. Just as the plans to invade and overthrow the government of Iraq, those were in plans a long time before. Matter of fact, Paul O'Neill, Secretary of the Treasury, was rather annoyed at the first cabinet meeting because the first thing on the agenda in the first part of the first month of the year in 2001 was, when are we going after Iraq? When are we going to invade? And he actually got fired over the whole thing. He only lasted a few months because he was so dumbfounded about this obsession about going into war. But there are other things happening now on our civil liberties that are really, really frightening. Back in last February, the administration came, one of the members of the administration came to a Senate hearing, and he explained a new policy. And the new policy was that the president now has the authority to assassinate American citizens. Without charges, without a trial, but because they know he's a bad person. Well, you know, in a way, that's what the rule of law is all about. Even when you're a bad person, you get a trial, a fair trial, and then you get a conviction to make sure that all of us are treated the same way. But once you set a precedent and say, well, you know, a president can declare this, and since subsequently there's been 3 Americans assassinated, and one was a Lockheed, and he did orchestrate some noise about violence. He never committed violence. He was never charged, never convicted. But I wouldn't want to defend him. But if he wanted to be charged, he should be charged in court. But because he was in Yemen, we just decided to just go and assassinate him. But a week or so later, they said, well, he had a family member that was probably, involved as well. So they sent another missile over there, and they assassinated him along with his friend. They were in the backyard. They were barbecuing. And the son was 16 years old and his cousin was 17 years old. So I think there's a limit. And that's only 3 people. But that's a precedent. And that's not good. That's a bad sign. And some of you may have heard this past week the National Defense Authorization Act was passed. And that
Very bad.
That to me is very impressive that you know about it. But it's another bad sign on the direction that we're going. Because in this bill, it is granted to the president the authority to arrest militarily any American citizen who may be suspected of being allied with somebody else and that they think is bad. So that means maybe visiting a website or attending a meeting or sending money to somebody, and that you are denied an attorney. And they brag about it on the Senate floor. If they ask for an attorney, just tell them you don't get an attorney. Once again, very bad precedent to set that individuals like that, and they can be held indefinitely, and they can be sent to a military prison like Guantanamo, and no questions asked. So this is a trend that has to be reversed. We have to say that they've overdone it. This is what the revolution was fought about. And this is the repeal of posse comitatus, the military. We don't have military law. And we're supposed to have civil law and state law to take care of violent acts, not the military moving in. And these abuses have occurred for a while, I imagine for a good while. But they at least in the old days, knew they were illegal and they hid them. But now it's out there. It's out there, and they've codified this. It's right in front of our face. This is the law of the land. It's an enactment of giving this power to the president. So government breeds on itself. If you grant too much government decision making and go into war, if you give government too much decision making on how your money is going to be spent and they have to take care of you, it breeds this, and civil liberties are undermined. The essence of a free society is really the understanding of civil liberties. I am very excited about the whole idea of liberty and personal freedom, and for various reasons. One, that's what I want for myself. I'm very selfish. I want to live in a free society. But the other thing neat about it, and even if and since the Constitution is a defense of liberty and a restraint on government, that what it does, it recognizes that it brings people together for different reasons. If we recognize, look how many people are here, everybody leads their life the way they want. So many different Christian values, different religious values, and different beliefs. And somebody might not want to have beliefs, and you might want to spend your spare time different ways. But that has been protected. So the issue of liberty should bring us all together, even though we have diverse uses. And the one place where people get hung up on this is, oh no, if I allow him to do this, he might go out and gamble, and gambling is so bad, and we don't want him to do that. We want him to be a better person. But when you legalize liberty, you don't endorse what the people do. I mean, it isn't an endorsement. We don't endorse people's religion. Some people do some bizarre things in the name of religion, but because we legalize it doesn't mean you endorse it. The limitation is you don't hurt anybody. You can't hurt other people. I mean, if you're living your lifestyle the way you want, you should be permitted to do this. So people come together this way, and rather than people fighting over it. If people want more government to regulate our personal lives, this means that the government is trying to say they're going to keep you from hurting yourself, and they can't do that. That is your responsibility in a free society. If the government assumes this role, of trying to make you virtuous and drive and get you to work for excellence, which should be our goal, at least that's what I think our goal ought to be. But if government takes over that function, there's no liberty left. The government does this with force, and they do it from not only from morning till night, but it's dawn to, it's from cradle to grave, and they get involved, and it breeds on itself, and it continues to grow. And I think what happened, whether it was economic or in foreign policy, we lost our confidence, and it was gradualism, incrementalism, a little bit here, a little bit there, to the point where now we don't really have the freedoms that I think are absolutely necessary. But what is happening in the country is all of a sudden people are paying attention. It's many people that come out like this and they're interested and want to get back to the basics. I have a bad report for you, because in Washington, I don't even think they're yet hearing you. They're still piddling around. They're not cutting back anything. I mean, have they shrunk the size of government? Are they advising that we bring these troops home and change our foreign policy and at least get the Fed audited? Maybe someday we'll get rid of the Fed. They continue to do it, but the good news is there's a lot of people like you that are waking up. I'll tell you what, there's a change, there's a dramatic change from 4 years ago till now. It was gradual. I said before that I've talked about this for a lot of years, but it was small. And I always worked on the assumption, well, my responsibility is to set a record, talk about it, and vote the right way, and maybe somebody will notice. But I'll tell you what, there's a lot of people noticing right now. And it's not so much that I give any grand speeches, but there's a desperate need for this right now. There's a real need economically. People know they're in trouble. People know we have to cut back and do the things necessary to have free markets again and protect personal liberty and come up with a more sensible foreign policy. Debt, though, I want to gradually work out of this, but debt always gets liquidated when it gets to a certain amount. So when it's over the top like it is, $15 trillion, all this money, we cannot, eventually pay all this off. So governments know this too, but they don't default like we can. Individuals can go through bankruptcy and default, which is at times necessary. But what governments do is they never do that. They will always send a check out. If you buy a treasury bill, and if you have a treasury note now of 10 years and you cash it in 10 years, you'll probably get maybe you'll get $1,000 worth of purchasing power, or even less because of the way we're going. But that's the way government gets rid of debt. They borrow money and give you back money that has less value. So if you can devalue 50%, you wipe out half our national debt. That's their goal. That's what they're trying to do. Why that is so bad is some people suffer more than others. The people who get to use that new money first benefit. Once again, it's the banks and the big corporations and Wall Streets and governments and the politicians. But when it circulates, you get the bad effects because your prices go up. And this is what they're working on, is the devaluation of the currency, and they will continue to bail out everybody as long as people will accept the dollars. But the people are recognizing this. But the groups are getting larger. There's a lot more interested, and I'm very excited about the fact that the young people are looking at this too.
We love you, Ron!
Because the young people, I think, sort of perk up, and I think they might have been educated in schools, and they might have had less education than at some other time in our history, but they still know arithmetic, and they know they're getting a bad deal, and they're getting truly is popular, and young people, I think, seem to like consistency and principle. But there's a few people here that might not be considered college students, but for those, they're young at heart and they believe in liberty. So we're all in this together, and I'll tell you what, we're making a lot of progress, and it won't be easy. But I know if we don't do it, if we don't work our way out of this, it's going to be much, much tougher. Because I'm afraid of violence coming. When you see what the government is preparing for, and the arrests and military law, and the demonstrations on the street, some people aren't going to be convinced so easily that you don't owe them a living. And if there's no money there, they're going to be upset and angry. We see this in Europe already, and we see demonstrations in our country. I think we should make sure that when we demonstrate, because I have obviously sympathies for the Tea Party movement, and even a lot of what the Occupy movement is doing, because they're sick and tired of getting ripped off. But there's a difference between somebody earning money, becoming wealthy, because they provide a good product for you, and you vote for them by buying their product, and they don't get any benefits from the government. That's okay in my book. But if they get rich because they rip us off and they get the tax benefits and the contracts and the military industrial complex and the bankers, that's a different story. So I think it's important to separate the two and know what we're going after. And yet, we can usually sort this all out by understanding what liberty is and what the founders gave us. They gave us limited government. It was to limit the government, not to limit the people. You're not to be limited. You're to be protected. You're in a free society. You're allowed to make your own mistakes. When you make your own mistakes, you might have to suffer the consequences. If you deliver the power to Washington, D.C., they have two problems. One, they don't know what is good for you. And two, even if they thought they did, they're going to make mistakes. And when they do it, it affects all of us. So this is the big difference. No, you don't have a perfect society when you have a free society, because people will make a lot of mistakes. But the big thing is, it's so much wealthier. And there's so many other things that can be done. There's so much more chance for charity. And when I even got into medicine, we didn't have government medicine. The churches ran the hospitals. And the churches, would take care of the people that couldn't afford it. But today, the more government's involved, all we do is shoot up the prices. So it will work. We need confidence. We had a great test in this. We had the best test in the history of mankind. We had the freest and the most prosperous society. And what I see, what we're doing is we're allowing this to go away. And we have to reverse this. And the smoother we can do this, the better. But the more chaotic it is, the more risk we have, because more laws are going to be put on the books, when it comes to law and order and what we're going to do. But ultimately, the defense of our liberties, as the founders understood very clearly, they thought it was very important that we maintain an ability of self-defense. So they were very, very direct in that, in writing the Second Amendment for our ultimate defense. Though there's reasons to be concerned and worried, I really believe that there's reason for a lot of optimism. It's serious business, and the strong advice I give to people who get involved in politics or education or trying in one way or the other to improve our society is that come together with like-minded people, even though you might have different interests in different churches. Bring people together, because the real issue is the protection of liberty. And we ought to have fun doing this, because it is hard and tedious work, and we don't know what tomorrow will bring. Nobody knows what tomorrow will bring for any of us. But I have such a strong belief and strong conviction that a free society is the best thing that mankind can offer for the best chance to produce peace and prosperity. Thank you very much.
Once said, "Veni, vidi, vici." I came, I saw, I conquered. You came tonight. You saw the next president of the United States. And we're going to conquer! You're going to conquer. And the way you're going to conquer is you vote. You vote on January the 3rd. You get yourself, you get your wife, your kids, your friends, your husband, your spouse, and your neighbors. and show up on January the 3rd and vote. It is your responsibility and your opportunity to make history, to build a future for you, your friends, your family, kids, and your grandkids. Let's make it happen January the 3rd.
Yeah!
Ron Paul, 2012.
I liked your mic check idea, Jim.
Yeah, I
wish
didn't
we
go
could've
off
organized
quite
that.
as well, so I wanted
Cool at the
to.
end when he was done. Somebody go, mic check, and then everybody go, thank you, Ron Paul.
Well, they were kind of did it, but it didn't
You
go
know,
off quite
that
as
would've been
smoothly.
cool.
So they kind of did it, but it just didn't go off too
We
smoothly.
showed up. Love you, Ron Paul. Keep us safe. I would have preferred to keep us free.
Yeah.
Keep ourselves safe, but you know what I mean? So how's Jim doing?
Doing good.
Good?
You got the campaign headquarters going on down there?
You filming me now, or what's going on here, man?
Yeah.
It's good to see a lot of young folks here.
It's a Scott County office. I wouldn't call it a campaign headquarters.
Well, that's okay. Unless we got something happening.
There's going to be a bunch of college students coming in next week. They're going to make phone banking and all that there and so forth. So.
Good job. Thank you, Todd.
Yeah,
And but that reader story, man, that kicked butt.
that was fun.
Yes, that's gonna make a lot of attention now.
Gotten some good. It was a good issue. I was hoping to get Ron to sign it, but I don't think he's doing an appearance.
I was hoping maybe he scooted out the back door, so he didn't even hang around. So I was hoping maybe he'd stop on down at the Peterson building, but
I don't think it's going to happen.
yeah, did anybody even try?
And today's event was, I think, his like third or fourth of the day.
Oh,